Okay, we are recording for our oral history archive. My name is Antonia Krupicka-Smith. That is spelled ANTONIA-KRUPICKA-SMITH. And I'm the library director here at the Council Bluffs Public Library. And joining me is Mary. Mary, can you state your full name and what you do here at the library?
Sure. My name is Mary Carpenter, and I am the Support Services Manager here at the Council Bluffs Public Library.
Great. And we are recording on May 12th, 2023, shortly after 2 p.m. here in the boardroom here at the Council Bluffs Public Library on 400 Willow Avenue. And do I have permission to record this interview with you and make it part of our archive?
Sure.
Okay, we appreciate that. So we're going to get started, and we're going to be talking about the library building itself.
Okay.
Since we're coming up on the 25th anniversary of this building opening to our community. So first off, you've already told us what your role is here now at the library, but I'm wondering what your role was 25 years ago with the Council Bluffs Public Library.
I was a reference librarian, fresh out of library school.
Great. And were you from the community?
No. I am originally from Moorhead, Minnesota, and was working at a library up there, and they laid me off, and I said, well, I kind of like this, so I went to grad school in Emporia, Kansas. And this is my first job out of school.
First job out of school?
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. So now we're going to get into those memories.
All right.
And I'm just curious to know, what do you have a memory, or what can you associate when you were first told we're moving into a new building, a new library was built? What is your memory associated with that?
Well, I always knew because I came with the library. So I worked, I had the chance to come early and start work right away or wait until after the move. And A, I needed the money, so I started right away. And B, I wanted to work in the old building so that I wouldn't get any of this, well, you should have seen what it was like in the old building. And I got to experience what it was like in the old Carnegie Library. So I always knew going in that there was going to be a move. So I was kind of looking forward to it. Maybe we were open for a month, so I didn't get a lot of on-hands reference training with the public. So, and then, yeah, that's, I guess, so I knew it was coming, so there was no real, I know all the other employees were probably very happy that I was happy because it was a mess over there. And being able to come into a new building that was accessible, just that accessible, was going to be a lot of fun. Having everything in shelf order was going to be a lot of fun. So, like, things weren't like, well, part of it's upstairs and part of it's over here. And even our large, oversized books could be in shelf order. The simple things, really, that got me excited. But
the simple things.
The simple things. Things in shelf order. Yeah. Just space. It's just 3 times the space. It's just, and we could have used more. I think we learned later, but so I don't know if that. Yeah.
It's your memory.
I could go on about it, but the move and everything. So
yeah. Well, and let's dig into that. So you always knew that you were going to be moving into a new building, so you didn't really have to think about getting a new building. You just knew, hey, that there's a new building there, and I'm hired because I'm needed at this new building.
Yes.
So there was none of that angst around why are we in this small place?
Yeah.
But let's talk about that move. Let's talk about any memories you have associated with actually opening the facility, whether it be before the doors were open, or any, the process of moving into a new building and what that is like, and the process of, you open those doors and it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be, and any of those kinds of early day, well, that didn't work out like we thought.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was interesting because we hired a company, it was out of Glenwood, so it was a regular moving company. And we had a process, and I remember a lot of kids, like high schoolers. So we must have hired high schooler kids or temp workers. But we would have this special way we had to pack the boxes. So that way they were still in shelf order, because that was, yeah. And we had to take the barcodes. There was another process of taking the barcodes from the inside of the book to putting them into the outside of the book because of a new self-check system that we had and checkout systems. I don't know if we weeded much, because Miss Smock always wanted a new library, and so she didn't weed. And so a lot of stuff came over there. I don't think she ever should have come over, but so once we got all packed up, we had this sort of conveyor belt that went out one of the windows on the first floor into the back of this moving truck, and they just, came over 2 blocks or a block really, and just kind of wheeled it all in. And then we would work in tag teams of putting stuff back in shelf order. We kind of had figured out where stuff go, and we had to shift a few times, obviously. I remember before we moved, watching the company put all the reference office furniture together. That was interesting, because they always seemed to forget a part. So we were waiting for our desks to be done, and it's like, oh no, we got to get these screws. And I'm like, isn't there like a little manual that tells you? One day we were putting the shelving up in the regular stacks, and there was no air conditioning yet in the building. And this was all happening in July, August. And I was like, Mary, are you always that white? I'm like, well, I am from Fargo, but... And I just, it was the heat was getting to us all, so we had to go back to the old building and put a little ice on our necks and stuff like that, and just a lot of packing tape. That sound of just like, every time now I hear packing tape coming off those little plastic guns, it just takes me right back. Just pat boxes together. And we had to go back. We had opportunities to go back to the old building and get stuff, because for some reason they brought over these huge manual typewriters, probably from the 40s, that they still had, why we still have it. And then they left behind these nice electric typewriters back at the old building. I'm like, I don't know why, but so we went back and forth. But that was it was hot, it was dirty, it was dusty. I was thankful for that, because I had no money, so therefore I had no dress clothes to wear. So it fit into my wardrobe, shorts and t-shirts. That's what I wore to grad school, so that's what I could wear to work too. Particular memory is when we're moving stuff in, and I asked our director, Doris Wanick, she was not director, but she was the reference manager. And I said I wanted to be in charge of special collections, because all the other librarians seemed to have little niches they were in. We had, Dave was a cataloger, Katie had government documents, and Maggie kind of was taking care of the reference kind of schedules and everything. And so I said, well, I'd like to do special collections. She was thrilled. She's fine. And of course, all of that stuff that's in special collections had been kept in a vault in the basement over in the old library. And it was dark and damp, which is a great place for, artifacts, right? And pulling out these envelopes, and you could see where the silverfish had just kind of eaten around the edge of all these envelopes. And so that's kind of what I'm dealing with. And plus you had bound volumes of newspaper that were probably stored in the same room where a coal chute had most likely historically been, because there's coal dust. There's still coal dust up there. Mm-hmm. And so there was coal dust and leather dust and regular dust and probably mouse dust. And it was I'm just head to toe. I have these old ugly shorts on and a t-shirt. And the director, Jim Godsey at the time, comes in. I say, well, Mary, the board would like to meet you. I'm like, what? And it's like, yeah, well, we're having a meeting. They'd just like to meet. And I'm just filthy. I just sort of stick my head in the door and wave, oh, well, you could join us. And I'm like, I don't know. Sweaty and dirty. It's like, no, it's all right. I'll go back to work. Thank you. But so yeah, it was just kind of dirty, but it all worked out. It was kind of nice. It was just nice. I that's what I enjoyed. Just because the old building did have an elevator, but you had to go upstairs to get in the building to get in the elevator. So it was just more for getting book cards up and down. So that's kind of my initial memories.
Yeah. How many days did it take to move?
I don't know.
Do you have an idea of like how long the libraries were closed to the community to facilitate this?
I don't think it took very long to actually get the materials over, because I remember I started in June and we were open for, was it a week or 2 weeks? I can't remember. Because I know we had to have closed in July. And so I think some of the packing and weeding had gone on, but that's in earnest. I think we just dove right in. And then in August, beginning of August, we had our open house, our cold open. So really it must have only taken a month. And and then we had like, I think we didn't have all the computers yet or something when we wanted to open in August, but wasn't until September. So we had that time from, I think, August to September, that month too, to kind of put things away and get it all set up. So it must have only taken a couple of weeks, because really we only had to go a block. And if we forgot anything, but yeah, that part I can't remember, because I was just kind of head down, but
doing it.
Yeah, concepts of time
Yeah. And so opening day, do you remember opening day? Do you remember anything about that experience of opening the doors and how it was received by the community and what you were doing that day? What was your job?
I don't remember specifically, but odds are I was dealing with people on the internet. Yeah, it was interesting. I was working the reference desk. We were excited. Well, for me, but the others that had been working in the old building, just to have. In the old building, I don't think they had off desk time or off desk hours, because they just didn't have an office. I think Doris might have had an office downstairs in the basement, but the librarians and the regular staff, we didn't have, like, we had a drawer, and a desk. Mm-hmm. So that was nice for people to be off desk. But I know when we first opened, I don't think there was really an anticipation of how, well, we should have anticipated how popular the internet access was be. And we had absolutely no plan, really. It was just a sign-up sheet on a clipboard. Oh. And we're dealing with the honor system and of having to go, and it was just imagining teenage boys. That's kind of my vision. I mean, my kind of feeling is just teenage boys showing up, getting on the internet. So use your own imagination. Because teenage boys, no matter if this is 20 years ago or now, but what do teenage boys want to look at on the internet? So that was interesting. But yeah, that was dealing with the internet, and if like people hanging around the reference desk waiting to get on the internet. Well, they've been on there for a half hour. It's my turn to get on the internet. So there was no timers, no. That's what I remember. But I remember too, people, being able to come into the library. A lot of people expressed they missed the old library. Kind of looked at them funny. Okay. I said, I can get you an old book to sniff as you browse, but yeah, it was busy. It was busy. I don't think it really hit me. I mean, we had that sort of cold open where people could come in and check it out, but I don't really remember. I think it was just get to work, because then I ordered, I love it, we had, what do we have, like one person ordering for nonfiction right now?
Yeah, for adult nonfiction.
For adult nonfiction, we had me, Dave, Katie, there's 4 of us ordering. We had 4 full-time librarians. And we each had sections for ordering for nonfiction. So that was all very new. And I think for me, it was just a learning experience. It wasn't, working in a library wasn't new, but just kind of this new responsibilities, new roles, dealing with the public and, well, that I was sort of used to, but yeah, I'm in a more responsible, role. But
so, it has been 25 years. What would you think as a memory is like the biggest change or the biggest thing that, well, I'm glad they fixed that because they got that wrong on the first day?
Well, I think I just answered that question. It was the internet. I think when this, because the timing, I think, was just, in that aspect, was probably wrong for the library because it was like, we opened, 98? And so they were probably 97, 96. So really, when they were planning all this, the internet was just like, oh, well, this is really cool. This is interesting. And I think finally getting like internet access and having patrons being able to sign in themselves so we don't have to police them, at least as time-wise goes, and printing. People would print out reams of paper. It's like, oh, well, I didn't mean to pay. I don't know, So now that's all automated. So you can just tell people, well, if you print it out, it's going to cost you, 10 cents a page or whatever. So getting the internet lab, I think that finally, Teen Central, I think that was huge because that was you kind of knew that opening up that was a huge gap. I mean, they had like a small collection. They had this jukebox, didn't it? No, it wasn't an actual jukebox, but there was sort of where fiction starts, kind of that area now, where fiction is now, and that's where the YA collection was, which is like maybe 2 ranges, and they had this wooden, it was shaped like a jukebox, and it had colored lights on the top of it and a mirror behind it. And it was just a display, but that was like supposed to be the hip thing for the kids, was this jukebox.
In 1998.
1998, yeah. But that helped a lot too, because I know now for probably having me down in support services is probably a good thing too. I really enjoyed working the reference desk, but when it comes to some of the teenagers, it's like it can be, but that, yeah, having Teen Central, I think, was good too, because that kind of gave them something to do, a little more structure, and it met a need that was just a gaping hole, really, I think, as far as our services went. Because if you're a little kid, great. If you're an adult, great. But if you're a teenager, just sit down, be quiet, get out. So
yeah.
But I don't know. But those are the 2 things.
Do you have any other memories of this library or your experience that you want to share?
Golly. I was kind of thinking about this because I knew we were going to talk. And it was always kind of interesting because one of the memories was 9/11. And I worked that day, and support services had a TV at that time, and I was still in working reference, and so I'm down, of course, with everybody else watching the TV, but that afternoon was just as we were talking earlier, airplanes go over here all the time. Well, by that afternoon, I'm sitting at the desk, it's just me, a few patrons in, and it was a lovely day, sunny day, but it was quiet, deadly quiet. And there was I remember seeing there's a regular patron who was just over sitting and reading a newspaper, and I'm following the news on the internet. And then all of a sudden in the afternoon, I heard jets taking off from Offutt. And it was Bush taking off, going back to D.C. That was just like, I don't know, because it just kind of made it all real. And I just remember I can see myself sitting in that same spot. But that's one of the memories. I guess it's. I talk about the building being accessible, but to me, thinking about the 25 is the people that I've worked with. Doris, who I've mentioned, was just a sweetest woman, and she was the reference manager, and she just unfortunately passed away, just a little while after we opened. But she had cancer and she was suffering, but she was just always like maybe gave a little too much. You know what I mean? It's like, sorry, keep some of that for yourself. There was Dave Archer. He was my predecessor. Became a good friend and kind of helped me out. He was my buddy here at work. We watched each other's backs, because sometimes, you need somebody like that at work, just to kind of give you a heads up every once in a while if something's going down. And getting to know the history, I've had a lot of fun doing that over the past 25 years, of just discovering little big things, little things. I met Stephen Ambrose. He came to the library. It was Nothing Like It in the World, I think is that book on the people. And we didn't really have anything here for him, but he came and I said, well, here's what we have. And he just told me that librarians were doing God's work.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'll take that. What else? Oh, a lot. I mean, I'll keep that one to myself.
So share your memories about internet access here at the library.
Internet access. I remember the stampedes in the morning. We would literally have like 10, 15 people outside waiting to get in. And they would run up the stairs to get on the internet. Once we took care of, there was 8 that were up on the east side past the reference desk. I'm trying to think what's there now. I don't think there's anything. Anyway, towards where the meeting rooms. Anyway, that was the public access. And that didn't last very long. We then moved it over to where it is now. But it wasn't regulated. So there was no timesheets. There was I think we still had timesheets. But people would get on there, and I remember, we'd open at 9, and I left at 5:30, and there was one particular guy. He'd be there all day, from 9 in the morning until 5:30 at night, and then eventually we had timed software equipment. But as I was saying, sometimes we would have issues with the internet early on, and in the front of the building there's an electrical closet, and I think that's where a lot of the internet came in. And if we would have issues, if something was glitchy or the internet was down, there was a modem, just like a modem, like you have in your living room now, modem, and that was the whole library's internet came through that modem, and so you would unplug it and plug it back in, just like anyway. There's that show, the IT Crowd, but anyway, and so eventually we upgraded. Then as internet got faster and faster, we'd kind of improve. There was got to be a point, though, I could tell think this was before fiber optics. I forget. Tom would know all this. He'll know the top. But you could tell when school got out, because I would be back, ordering away on the internet, and all of a sudden, bam, things are taking forever and ever and ever to load. And there was a couple of days I just said, I'm going to go home and finish out my day, because the kids are sucking up all the bandwidth. There was just like no bandwidth to go around. And I believe Barbara Peterson, a director at the time, we had, at one time, there was what is now the server room, was the internet lab for not very long, because there was no ventilation in there, and it just smelled like an old locker room after a while. It smelled like junior high in there. It was not good. But that's kind of where we were storing our old computer equipment, stuff that we couldn't use anymore. And so the city was looking for a place for all their servers. And Barbara said, well, we'd really like to help you out, but, we got all this stuff here, and it needs to be recycled. And, if you guys could help us out. Well, the city had to then become our recycler and took on all of our old equipment. And then that became a server room. And our internet comes faster. All of a sudden we have fiber optics coming in. And so now I can't imagine, because you throw in Wi-Fi, I can't imagine the bandwidth that's being used. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and streaming and downloading. And that was, and just, the very slow, but I especially love that memory of unplugging and plugging back in but yeah. And we used to have the privacy screens. I don't know if they still had those. I think we replaced those before you came. And this was our way around of if somebody was looking at something inappropriate. And you would look down, there was like a piece of smoked glass, if you will, like set in the tabletop, and the computer monitor was underneath there. So you had to look hunched over. Instead of looking up at a screen, you would look through it, the table, into your screen, and then the monitor and everything was there. But it worked a bit, but yeah. I don't know how far you want to get, but yeah, that's one thing I don't miss about working a reference desk. But anyway, and then eventually it just have what we now, monitors and stuff. So for a long time we didn't have monitors.
So you just saw desktops.
You just saw desktops.
Tables.
And tables and stuff like that. And so then.
But that's not how it was when we opened?
No, in the very first day, no. It was like, you remember that, well, maybe you don't remember, the computers from the 80s or the 90s, this big, huge, there's probably, 2 gigs of, well, maybe by then there was 4 gigs of memory in them. Yeah, I had my computer I bought in 97 had 2 gigabytes of memory on the hard drive, a 2 gig hard drive. That was hot stuff back then. So, yeah, your big old, monitors, fat monitors and stuff like that. And so there was 8 of them. And yeah, like I said, we just sign up sheets, and then we kind of expanded. So, but I think now as people have their computers in their hands with their little phones and tablets and laptops.
So there was 8 computers in total?
Yeah.
When we opened the building?
Yes.
Oh.
For public internet access.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what I said. It wasn't a very good plan. I don't think they had an idea. I don't think they had a clue of what. They just had no idea. And I'm like, this isn't going to work, guys. Because I come from grad school. I ran the internet lab. I was one of the monitors. I was a teaching assistant. And we had, I think maybe we had about 10 computers, but that was just for schoolwork. But still, it's like everybody had a computer. And I said, this isn't going to.
For community.
For community, yeah. I think it must not have lasted very long, because I think we revolted. We had a board meeting, and I remember it was me and Maggie Baker, another reference librarian, and we just said, look, you're paying us a lot of money to be internet monitors. If you just want me to sit here with this clipboard all day, watching teenage boys on the internet, but I don't think that's why you hired us. So, then they kind of thought about it. Okay, this isn't sustainable the way it was.
And there wasn't like kids' computers and teen computers, or there was just 8 computers.
I think there was just 8 computers. I can't remember if there was any in the youth department. Maybe 1 or 2. I think eventually there was like 2. They had 2 down there. But no, there was, and then there was no Teen Central or anything. So no, it was just 8. So just 8. And they had I think a couple of computers for databases. So if like you were
searching
databases, we had Newsbank or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so we could say, no, those are, but still they managed to get on those.
Yeah.
We could kick them off. But yeah, it's just, what was there to look back in 98? I don't know what we were, I don't know.
The World Wide Web.
The World Wide Web. But yeah, and then at that time I knew something about computers, but I don't anymore.
Yeah.
I think, should I tell you how we discovered the online catalog?
Yeah, great memory.
I don't know how much to tell about Tom's predecessor, if I should tell that story or not.
Well, it was before the building, right? So
no, it was during the building.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell it anyway. We had a gal that was hired to be our IT person who was pawning our computers. She had a gambling addiction. And so finally that was revealed, that she had been pawning computers and other equipment, so she lost her job. And during that point, of course, she had been distracted, so a lot of things. And we kept asking her, it's like, well, we don't have an online catalog yet. When are we going to get an online catalog? Oh, yeah, it's coming. And I was like, well, that's strange, but okay, whatever. And then Tom Ryan was hired. And Tom's like, and so at that point, I kind of knew stuff. I still knew DOS, which was useful to Tom on a few occasions, because if he needed to get into the hard drive of something. And we were on Innovative, it was all character based. We had it was very early. We didn't quite. Yeah, it was just a telnet. It was like a very character based checkout and cataloging, all that. But Tom came to me one day. He said, "Mary, I'm going through this documentation." He says, I think we have an online catalog. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, but I don't know I can't figure out how do we get to it. And so then a little light bulb goes over my head. And so I go into this telnet version, and there's a little IP address that we use to log in to it. Mm-hmm. So I take that little IP address and I just plug it into a web browser. Boom. There's our online catalog. Fully function. You type in, we search and stuff. We just sort of looked at each other like, oh. And then we went to the director, who was not tech savvy. Jim was not real tech savvy, and I think he was still using WordPerfect. Anyway, and we showed him the online catalog, and he just sort of had this like dazed look on his face. It's like that's how I became in charge of the online catalog.
Because you discovered it.
Because I discovered it, and then I went through. I'm like, oh, okay, and so I just taught myself how to make changes, like, okay, let's get a different background. This is kind of boring, because it was just gray, blue lines. And it's like, well, how do we make the display better? Oh, what if we want to add this, and what if we want to add that? So
I love it.
I became in charge of the online catalog and the website for a very short time.
Well, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.